All right. Well, it is now 5:30 on not Wednesday, sorry, habit. It's 5:30 on Tuesday, September 29th, 2020. We'll go ahead and get started. Scott, can you jump to the next slide?
Trying, there we go.
All right, so this is the Joint City Council Planning Commission meeting, and next slide. Before we begin, I do need to read this lovely notice of declaration that states, due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan City Council has determined that conducting this City Council and Planning Commission meeting at City Hall or at another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of the COVID-19 virus and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-2074, the West Jordan City Council hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. And this determination will expire in 30 days from the date the chair of the West Jordan City Council signs the written determination. And the next slide, I believe, says that was done on, what was it, September 8th. Okay, let's jump to the next slide. Give me just a moment here. So before we jump into the Pledge of Allegiance, just want to quickly recognize that we're joined tonight by Mayor Burton, various members of staff, members of the City Council and Planning Commission. We're expecting all to be in attendance later on. We have, oh, hold on, there's one more that just joined in. So I believe all planning commissioners are here except for Pamela Bloom, and all council members except for Zach Jacob and Chad Lamb, who are both anticipated to join us shortly. So we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and that will be led by Cindy Quick. Cindy.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, real quick, I'd invite everyone to put yourself on mute so as she leads, and then you can come off mute and turn on cameras after. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Okay, please repeat the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Okay, I'd invite those participating to go ahead and turn their cameras on now. For the sake of the minutes, I'd also note that Commissioner Bloom has also joined us. Go to the next slide. And here's the high-level overview for tonight. There are two different things that we're really looking to cover. Number one, we wanted to talk through a little bit about processes. What are the processes that staff goes through, the Planning Commission and City Council? Talk about what's working well and what improvements could be made. We'll have a little bit of a conversation about some of the processes where, when the Planning Commission's a recommending body, when the City Council has leaned on the Planning Commission for support and direction and kind of a basis for decision, and when we've gone the other direction and the recommendation has not been adhered to. And we'll have a little bit of conversation about that so that we can a little bit better align and understand where each body's coming from. From there are certain items in code that each group, prior to the meeting, there was a survey that was sent out, and each group shared some ideas of places in code that may need to be visited. So we're going to, at a very, very high policy level, talk about which of those items we feel are most important to bring to the Planning Commission and City Council first. And then if we have some time, we'll get into some of the specifics, maybe 7 to 9 minutes on each of those, each of the top 5 topics. So high level, that's where we're hoping to go through. That's what we're hoping to go through tonight. Jump back one slide here real quick. So the processes, just so everybody can kind of see where we're at with time management, it's usually a little bit easier to make sure things stay on track, if everyone kind of has a feel for what we're shooting for. We've got about 50 minutes or so that we want to dedicate to talking about the processes. So we're shooting for about 6:25, a little earlier, a little later, won't be hugely problematic, but just kind of in the back of your mind, that's what we're shooting for on this first portion. Next slide shows you the three main things that we're going to start with. The different elements that staff goes through that doesn't require, those items that don't require planning commission or city council approval, the items where planning commission approves and then that resolves the issue, or those that start with the planning commission and then move on to the city council for approval. So with that, Scott, can you give us a little bit of background as to what staff is doing and how much of the work stays on your plate versus what's going to everybody else?
Yeah, thank you, Council Chair McConaughey. You can see that the stats are right there over the last 2 3/4 of a year. What community development? Let me back up. So, community development, for those of you who do not know, includes multiple divisions, and within the department, we've got planning, we've got development, review, engineering, we've got the building division. We've got code enforcement and business licensing. We also have real property, but we typically don't have permits or applications for real property, but they are very important and when a lot of this other stuff. So I only included, of course, I could have added more to these stats, but I wanted to only focus on official applications and official permits. And so you can see that there's a significant volume of permits, and that could include everything from business licenses to rezones to many different things. Is my audio breaking up?
No, totally
Okay.
fine.
All right. So again, these are overall community development department, top to bottom, and you can see the staff only, the staff and planning commission, staff, planning commission, and city council, because in order for an application to get to the city council, it has to be first reviewed by the staff, planning commission, and those recommendations are forwarded, of course, to the city council. Numbers are important, but I want to just stress and emphasize that there are some applications that are extremely time consuming. We've got a number of very large master plans in the works right now, and that's chewed up a substantial amount of time from top to bottom, from council to commission to staff, right? And each element has value, and each plays a very important role in the amount of work that our department does. So let me move on. There you can see the breakdown of community development. So staff approval, just to give you an idea of some of these applications or permits. Again, there's a wide variety, and this is not a comprehensive list that you can see on your screen, but this should paint a general picture of some of these things that we're reviewing. Encroachment permits, for example, since it's at the top of the list, on average, we've got about 350 to 400 permits per year, just with encroachment into our right of way that we have to review for safety and so forth. So, but the overall, the general process is very simplified, and it varies slightly from application or permit to permit. But basically, it's submitted, it's reviewed by staff, and then approved by staff. Of course, by way of delegated authority from the legislative body, from the city council. And Chris, if I'm skipping ahead, if you want me to dig into something a little bit more, let me know.
No, you're good. By the way, if there are any questions, since this is a workshop, you're more than welcome to speak up. If you'd like, there's a little in the chat panel, there's a little option to raise your hand so we can see who it is that'd like to speak. That helps keep order. But if nobody else is saying anything, feel free to just jump on in if you've got any questions along the way.
We good so far? You'll see in the next few slides where I break it down a little bit more to focus on applications more germane to the planners and engineers, which more directly impact the workload of Planning Commission and City Council, which is this slide. So you can see that if I pull out all of the building permits and business licenses and things like that, what that does to the overall numbers. And it shows a rough breakdown of 62% staff, 26% Planning Commission, and 12% going to City Council. Oh, is there somebody in the chat?
Yeah. Rather than the chat, since folks who are at home won't be able to see that, Trish, are you able to fire off that question? So we've got the audio too.
Absolutely. There we go. I'm just curious, the financial impact of the reduced number of application. What does that mean to the city to process 1,000 less applications in 2020?
Are you referring to the last slide? The numbers on the last slide?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Generally, and let me see if I can go back here. There we go. I think based on the volume that we've got coming through the pipeline right now, I don't know if it'll really drop off that substantially. We still have a number. What you're not seeing in year to date is, it depends on the category permits, but some of these numbers are only good through August and some July. So those numbers will have to be updated. And so I don't know if it'll drop off too substantially. I know that some of the larger fees that we collect are tied to some very large industrial projects that we've recently approved. And overall, and let me back up. I don't know if the commission sees the building permit stats, but overall, the valuation, the square footage of the building permits being issued, it's near record levels, Commissioner Hatch. And so while the number of permits and applications may be slightly lower, probably due to COVID, overall the revenue seems to be quite healthy. And if the commissioners are interested, I'd be happy to take some time at maybe next week during your regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting to give you an update on some of those stats. I don't have those available right now to share with you, but overall it's quite good.
Thank you, Scott. That helps me a lot. And I recognize this is just year to date, and I want 2020 to be over really fast. So I recognize we have some other months that have to be accounted for.
Yeah, as we were preparing for this, if you could go back once more, one of the things that we also thought about was if the thought hadn't been so last minute, figuring out the number of each type of application and also the percentage of total. But then in addition, kind of as you were suggesting, Commissioner Hatch, seeing it not just year over year, but month by month, so we can see what sort of seasonality there is. Is it like an even distribution? Do we typically see a trail off like November, December during the holidays? We came up with a lot of ideas for data visualization that definitely exceeded the capacity and the time constraints of those who are involved in putting stuff together. But it's actually a really, really good question to bring up. I'm not the only one that's thinking along those lines, so that was good to hear. Thank you. All right, sorry, Scott.
No, you're great. I love the dialogue, and I actually do. If the commissioners do want to see that data, I'm more than happy to provide that to you.
Hey, Scott, I think next week we actually have a pretty short agenda, and Julia might shoot me for suggesting that you do it, but maybe we should target next week.
Okay, be happy to. And perhaps I can get some of that data to you pre-meeting so that I can be more efficient with time.
Everybody's good hanging out till 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. You're good. Sorry.
So you can see that there's some general trends. The city council typically sees around 40 of these land use applications per year. Roughly a little more than double for planning commission. But again, COVID has perhaps affected some of the numbers, but I don't think that's necessarily all that has affected numbers. As I mentioned before, we've got a number of very, very large master plans that may reduce the total number of applications, but certainly not the time constraints and time demands on staff or the planning commission or the council for that matter. So if no questions, I'll move forward. So here's some just quick bullet points of what I feel is working quite well in community development. We are averaging, and some of these numbers are a little bit old, but we're averaging just shy of 3 days per single family building permit, and that's near the top of the state. So we're actually quite pleased. In fact, not to digress, but Lane Western, our building official, just told me this afternoon that since COVID, we have done our best to do electronic submittals and reviews and approvals for a lot of these building permits. In fact, we just eclipsed the 1,100 permit issued today. So we're doing that through existing tools. It's a little clunky. It's been a little time consuming, but it's provided great customer service for the residents and for the customers in general that are looking to pull building permits. So looks like there was a comment that flashed up on the screen. I'm not seeing what
Yes,
that was.
Mayor, could you vocalize that for those watching at home, Mayor?
It just says woo-hoo. I think that is great that we are excelling in that area. Way to go, Scott, and your department. That is a big deal for West Jordan to make this happen. So thank you. And that's with using old instruments and tools.
Exactly. It certainly has been challenging, but I credit my staff for thinking outside the box and for using the existing tools that we have to work with. We've got many active business licenses that demand a substantial amount of time. We're trying to make that more efficient as far as our review of business licenses, but that's a work in progress.
Scott, you
Yeah.
have business licenses up there at 5,000 active, and then you have a proven average of 650. Are those new? The 650 new?
Those
Thank
are
you.
new. Yes.
And then Councilmember Pack had his hand as well.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Scott, you're awesome as always. Hey, question for you, please, regarding the 5,000 active business licenses prior to the state mandating that we can't charge a fee for those. Aren't they about $40 each? So that would equate about $200,000 in lost revenue because of not having a city business license. Where have we made up that difference in budget?
That's a fair question. I would have to defer to Denise, and she's not here.
Okay.
But
I was just curious.
look into that.
That's a big hit to the city, not charging.
Yeah.
You know, I have 3 active home-based businesses, and so it saves me $120, but I'd rather pay my $120 and have everybody else pay theirs, so that we have operating capital there. But so I figured that would have been a hit where that would have otherwise been allocated somewhere. So have you noticed any difference in your operations?
Well, I might add that those that don't pay are only home-based businesses. All the other businesses still pay their fees.
Oh, good point. Good point. Do you have any breakdown as to how many of those 5,000 would be home-based businesses?
I don't, but I can certainly get that data if the council is interested.
I was just curious. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Langford.
Yeah, and I will throw out that as we've been looking at future agendas for City Council, we're planning on having Chris Pengra chat with us about economic development. So that actually might be something good to come from him. He was in the attendees room. I've also bumped him up to panelist just in case. I know this is throwing you in front of the bus, Chris, and didn't have any chance to prepare for that. But just in case you do happen to have anything off the top of your head, wanted to give you an opportunity to speak up real quick.
I apologize. I don't have any data on that right now to provide you.
No worries. We should have put reading the council and commission's mind as part of the one of the requirements for the job position. So that's on us.
I'll try to anticipate that and still getting up to speed on a few different aspects. So I'm happy to work with Scott and make sure that you're provided with that information.
Beautiful. And thank you for joining us here tonight, by the way. For those on the Planning Commission who may not have met you yet, could you do a quick 20 to 30-second introduction of yourself?
Sure. I have been on staff as the Economic Development Director for the last 30 days now. Came from Rocky Mountain Power, where I served for about 3 years as their Economic Development Director. And prior to that, I was the full-time mayor of Eagle Mountain City for 4 years. And anyway, great staff, great city, and great council and mayor. And I'm sure we've got high quality planning commissioners as well. Anyway, just have very, very good things to say about the city and excited to be with the staff.
Thanks for being here with us. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions tonight for him as well, 30 days is long enough to get your feet wet. He's fair game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Scott, back to you.
Chris, stop picking on Chris.
I've got broad shoulders.
Yeah, so you can see the stats there. A substantial amount of administrative work that gets done that perhaps the Planning Commission and the Council may not be aware of. But if you have any specific questions or you want more detailed information about any of these stats, we're more than happy to provide you more. Just if you like Excel spreadsheets and things like that, we've got them for you. So, but a ton of
This is Chris McConaughey.
Yeah.
Scott already had his fill of that as we were trying to prep for this. You'll see a little bit of that later.
Yeah. I guess the last bullet point, I really, now since we've got Chris Pengra on here, what the council has done for years is done a great job at incentivizing and encouraging industrial development in West Jordan. And they've done that through developing good streamlined code for those industrial areas. Specifically, if you have a piece of property that's already subdivided, it's already got an M1 or M2 zoning, you can somebody can walk in the door, submit for a site plan, and if it meets all of the council adopted code, then the staff can review that administratively, and that is a huge feather in West Jordan's cap. And we've reaped the benefits of that over the years. So that continues to be a real bright spot for economic development, especially out on the west side in our industrial areas. So,
but wait, there's more.
Oh wait, there's more. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's getting better? So I am super excited. Just yesterday, we've selected a specific vendor that will provide a greater capability for software. And in our community development department, that's from our building division to our code enforcement division to business licensing and everything in between, where we will be much more efficient with our time, with our tracking of data. And we're super excited that Mayor Burton has made that a priority and that we can move forward with that. I'm not quite sure, because we haven't signed a contract, how much I'm able to discuss with this group tonight, but it dovetails in quite nicely with what we have already in the city. And so I think it was a great move forward. And we hope to start implementing that new software very soon, in the next month and a half. It'll take a while to get fully up and running, but we will move as quick as we can to provide better customer service for everybody. And that includes online payment. I think virtual meetings, not just what we're experiencing here tonight, but we've heard great things about the flexibility of holding Zoom meetings and other things like that with our contractors, with developers, with residents. And the flexibility is really going to be beneficial even after COVID is in the rearview mirror. So that, from a staff perspective, we've got a very bright future. But we would love to hear if there's any suggestions from the commission or council on other things that we should consider.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I have a question, Scott. In code 2-1-24, it talks about training for the Planning Commission. Who does that and how often?
Perfect. I am glad you brought that up, Councilmember Whitelock. So that training falls on our shoulders to do, and the city attorney's office to do. The Utah League of Cities and Towns provides some fantastic online training that we can also leverage. But pre-COVID, and I think we have a slide in the Planning Commission section coming up, that is one of our things that we want to improve is additional training. But let me back up. Pre-COVID, the pre-meeting to the first pre-meeting of every month for the Planning Commission, we would allocate that time for some training. But that's fallen off for obvious reasons. We with all of our virtual meetings, we haven't been able to, well, we haven't made that a priority. But I really feel that we need to refresh that and provide that training. And I don't know if that answers your question, but in the past, that's fallen on to my staff and Rob Wall's staff to provide that training.
And they do a great job of it.
Oh, looks like Pamela's raising her hand.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Bloom.
so since I was one of the commissioners coming on board post this COVID, and I have to say that the training that I did receive, it was good, but I don't feel that it was enough, because I feel that according to what you guys say, you do get that extra training or that talk before the meetings, where I don't have that opportunity and I haven't had that opportunity yet. So I'm still, I've called a couple of you guys to kind of get some insights and ask some questions. But overall, I think the training during COVID and beyond could probably be a little more in depth and refined.
Pamela, it's frying pan training.
I know.
Jump right in.
I love it. No, actually, it's my favorite
right
type
off
of training.
The deep end. Just go for it.
But for those coming on, it'd be nice to have a little bit more of a solid training plan that's virtual, so everybody's not kind of like figuring it out on the fly.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah, we did have, as Scott was mentioning, we did have it was nearly every single month, that first meeting of every month, we had about a 10 to 15 minute training on land use or on what our role was, or, there were a myriad of things, and Larry and Duncan really kind of alternated whether it was a legal or whether it was a code thing. So we did have a really good one, but as Scott said, it kind of fell off with not having a pre-meeting. We haven't made it any kind of a priority, and we probably should have, especially considering how new most of the planning commission is. But as we get back to these in-person meetings, we'll definitely resume that and make that a priority going forward. I think that's definitely a very good insight, Pamela.
Even before, I wonder if this is an opportunity to reach out to the league. They're regularly doing trainings for elected officials, and much of what's done there has carryover to appointed officials. I wonder if there's things that have like something that's been pre-recorded or something like that that could be canned and say, hey, this is applicable for this, and maybe like a schedule of those, or maybe we could get some sort of recording to help out with that.
Doesn't Utah League of Cities, don't they do the land use in 101?
Yep, their luau training. Yes, there's a lot of we'll call them entertaining videos that teach you about land use and the state code and things like that. So Commissioner Bloom or anybody, honestly, if you have the desire or specific questions, we're happy to provide those links to you. Absolutely.
So if you go on the main page, there's a tab for training and events, and there's all kinds of things in there, Pamela. Just under the Utah Cities, Leagues, and Towns, just on the main page, you go just right across the top, and there's trainings and events. And then there's also a video library too for training and training videos.
So I know we're going to talk more about training here on slide 17, but since we're kind of running with this now, I'll throw out another thought. Just as my mind was running with this, my thought was, as Commissioner Bloom was suggesting, like a training for those. She didn't come on during the regular cycle, so she missed some of the stuff at the first of the year. It'd be nice if there was just like a static sheet that said, here are some resources that are available to you, that's just provided to everybody. But the more that I thought about that, maybe if we could add something to the city's webpage that has it out there, so it's not just accessible to city council members of the planning commission, but how much of the meeting is spent, and this actually came up in some of the survey comments. People feel like the biggest impact that they have in their role is when they're educating the public on process, what we can do, what we can't do, the authorities that we have, the authorities that are with another entity. So if we're able to get those educational materials out there for everybody, that's beneficial, not just to us, but I think for the general public. So centralizing them so that everybody has access and we can point folks whom I think would be helpful. Granted, I realize our resources are Julie, and she's stretched 14,000 directions at the same time. But
well, we've got other, in Tani's office that, there's a lot of folks that perhaps, with the mayor's blessing, we can leverage some of those other resources.
So we do want to have a follow-up as to some of the things that we discuss here. Mayor, would you be okay if we ask, if obviously not tomorrow's meeting, but the meeting, the first meeting of October, would you be open to having a short report back as to what we might be able to do on that?
Yes, I've been taking notes, and I'm really glad that Councilmember Whitelock brought this up. I think this is really critical and important. So yes, is the answer. And Tani and Cindy are not here right now. Oh, Cindy is, but
Cindy's here.
Is not here right now. So we can make those assignments in this meeting.
Awesome. Ammon, did you have a comment as well?
Yeah, I really like that suggestion. I'm thinking about it from a practical perspective myself. When we have prospective planning commission members or even city councils, people are running, that would be a great resource to just put on the listing that, go here and take a look at some of these videos if you're interested, and in becoming a planning commissioner or running for city council and understand what it is that you're getting into.
I'm not sure how, we seem to have more applicants when people aren't so sure what they're getting into. So fine line, but yeah, no, thank you. Other thought, Councilmember Jacob, welcome. Just want to make sure the record shows you guys that you're with us now.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, yeah, any other suggestions or comments? We can move forward. Thank you. That was very helpful. So we've talked about kind of staff, and we've already kind of segued into the Planning Commission review and some of the things associated with the Planning Commission. Planning Commission does a phenomenal job at reviewing and making sure that a lot of the city codes are followed. They fulfill a very important administrative role. They also are quasi-legislative, meaning they forward a very important recommendations on to our legislative body, to the city council for action. You're often asked to look at conditional use permits and try to mitigate, detrimental impacts of specific uses to our neighborhoods. And you also, it's not, well, yeah, it is listed here. The planning commissioners, you have a unique perspective as you review many applications to call out deficiencies in our code. In fact, a number of years ago, we updated our code to limit our code amendments to certain authoritative bodies. Text amendments or code amendments can be initiated by staff, of course, by the city council, but also the planning commission. And again, you have a very unique perspective as you go through these applications, that if you see clunky parts of our code that need to be revised, it's not only important for you to bring it up, but that's part of your responsibilities to recommend those amendments. And actually, we'll get into that later on in our meeting. We'd love to hear some of your thoughts regarding potential changes to our code. So you can see just a rough flow chart here where applications are submitted, staff reviews them for completeness and general code applicability. They're then forwarded to the Planning Commission for your review. And depending on the type of application, the Planning Commission is oftentimes the final approval authority on those applications. Or if it's a quasi-legislative issue, a general plan amendment, a rezone, a code amendment, you as a group get to vote and forward a recommendation for the city council's review. And so any questions about information on this slide? Okay. So what's working well in with the Planning Commission? We put just a few quick bullet points on here. It illustrates, in my opinion, efficiency. If I were to pick one word to describe it, I've worked in different cities in different states, and I am very appreciative of our current Planning Commission, how you come prepared. You've read your information, you're familiar with the code, and that allows for us to efficiently move a lot of these applications through the process. So I put that as bullet point number one: efficient site plan and subdivision review. We as staff, where usually we have a specific point of view that we're coming from. The beauty of the Planning Commission, you've got 7 different viewpoints, and through discussion, there's often an improved result as we take these applications through for your review. I've listed here two specific applications that have come through the Planning Commission in recent years. Kramer Law, which is just south of the Justice Center on Redwood Road. That's a situation where you had an old lot, and it was had the zoning in there, and the Planning Commission was able to review the site plan, and through the Planning Commission's comments and interaction, you were able to approve, in my opinion, a very attractive building. It was very appropriate to the location, and it's a nice addition to kind of the complex, the building complex along Redwood Road. Secondly, this has been several years, the Salt Lake County Library over in Veterans Memorial Park. That was a great opportunity where the Planning Commission, through your reviews and comments and staff's comments, the design of that building was actually improved. You may not be, I'm not talking about the architecture, because some people love it and some people hate it, but I'm talking about the site placement. The original plan, and I don't know if Commissioner Quinney was on the commission at that time, but
Nope, that predates even me, Scott.
okay, all right. Well, the original proposal was to put that building on that property and separate the building from Veterans Memorial Park with parking lot. And so through discussion and so forth, it was able that building was moved further north. And in my opinion, it makes for a much better marriage between the uses in the library and the Viridian Center and the playground and the park. And it's just a great interplay between uses. And so that was a successful application that really benefited through the public hearing process with the Planning Commission. So
Zach, Jacob, were you on the commission at that time?
No, I was not. That predates me as well.
okay. There are many others. I think that even the minor tweaks in landscape buffers, in building aesthetics, all of that play a key role in creating a good community and a good city. So any comments or thoughts to what is working well? Okay, areas for improvement. We talked about training. Councilmember Whitelock, you were spot on. We need to improve our training. That leads to better decisions and better context to the decisions that we make. We've also listed here dialogue about past decisions, and we're going to be talking about that in more detail, and specifically dialogue between commission and council regarding some of those recommendations that the Planning Commission has forwarded to the council. Are there any other comments or thoughts on ways that we can improve the Planning Commission experience?
I might say I'm looking forward to when the Planning Commission and the council goes back in person. I think that meetings, communication between those presenting and the commission and the council goes better in person.
So Scott, here's an observation, and I felt uncomfortable with it. And it's been a while since I've been to one of their meetings with a pre-meeting, because it's been a while since they've been to one. But it very much has felt like to me at times that your staff has directed them on how they must vote. And that's troubled me. And you need to know that. When they're read a piece of paper that says, you have to do this, that really troubles me. And then what that translates in for me is, then when they give me something and I see the Planning Commission voted this way, did they vote that way because of what the pre-meeting discussion was, or did they vote that way because they as individuals felt they should? So I'm kind of troubled about that, and you need to be aware of that.
Thank you. I think that dovetails in nicely with the training element, Councilmember Whitelock, that you were referring to. There are certain administrative functions that there is some rigid things that the Planning Commission has to follow, but we should be more clear on the discretion that they do have.
Sure, and I understand that, and that's why for me, I feel they should be trained, and then we should let them follow the training and do their job. To me, it's almost micromanagement, which I'm not usually a fan of and not very good at.
Yeah, kind of following Councilmember Whitelock's comment, the thing that came to my mind was when it was explained to us that we needed to approve a certain goal because the state said that this is what the goal had to be. But then on further questioning, no, the state actually did not say this was the specific goal. There was some discrepancy on what the state was actually mandating versus what was recommended by staff. So some clarification, kind of breaking out the two, is a shared concern. We've got hands raised by Commissioner Allen, followed by Commissioner Hatch.
Yes, thank you. I've always appreciated the level of detail that staff has had on the Planning Commission. One thing that would really benefit me, and maybe there is a pattern to this and I just haven't picked up on it, but often the memos, the background discussion varies format to format based on who's putting it together. I would love to see some consistency on that. And another thing that would really help me is if it's very clear in the right up front, and it says these are the items that the Planning Commission is considering or is looking at specific to this application. So for example, we're looking specifically at screening a bay door. Then we're not looking at all of the rest of this project. At least I'm not, because my mind goes to the entire thing, not just the one little detail. So some way of just streamlining that would really help me.
Good comment. Thank you. Okay. Any other comments?
Scott?
Sorry, let me unmute myself. Commissioner Hatch was after Commissioner Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I actually take exception to Councilmember Whitelock's comment because I feel, and I also have to agree with Commissioner Allen, I do think it can be streamlined, but I have never felt pressure to vote or felt like I needed to agree with a certain approach or method or outcome. I've always felt that the material staff has provided has been excellent. It's been well thought out, well within bounds and reasons and what needs to happen. And I've always felt they've prepared us very well. And there are areas for improvement. I like Commissioner Allen's comment about having, this is what we're looking at. So we don't get sidetracked and wonder about what the lighting is going to be like when we're only just dealing with what the zoning is or whatever. But I have never felt like I've had to toe the line or join with anyone to vote.
So I'm going to jump in here as a perspective of somebody who was on the Planning Commission. I will tell you, and I will, let me preface this, by what I think we needed to do, and part of it was appropriate, but I think it did kind of. Well, let me just tell you an example. When there was a proposal for a commercial use in a PC zone of hotel rooms in a particular PC development, and everybody knows who I'm talking about. We had, and don't get me wrong, staff and legal staff had prepared some stuff on conditional uses and what the council or what the planning commission could do on a conditional use. But I actually, and I had read the state statute long before I had got to the meeting, and I knew what the bounds were, and I had actually pulled up a couple of cases. But I did think that in that particular one, there was, I don't want to use the word pressure, but there was some steering to say, oh, you have to vote this. And it wasn't, you have to vote this way. It was, this is the way it was very specific. And sorry. And I did feel like it may have been overly, I mean, we know that the planning commission on a conditional use can't use the public clamor theory that the city council in a quasi-legislative may be able to use. And I think if we approach that from those kinds of perspectives, it would have helped. I think we got the right decision. But it did cause a little bit of concern with me. So I understand where Councilmember Whitelock, Councilmember McConaughey are coming from, because there did seem to be some, well, you can't vote this way because it's more of, these are the kinds of things that you can do, and these are the kinds of ways that you can vote. And I think that may be able to be made more clear. One of the other things that may help with, as we talk about, and I may be coming up later on in the meeting, I don't remember the slides, but the one thing that I can tell you is that from somebody that was on the planning commission, the staff write the report and say, here's the finding of fact. Well, I'm going to step back for, and the staff, and in this process, and I hope the staff doesn't get too offended with this, but the staff doesn't make the finding of fact. If the ordinance requires a finding of fact, staff doesn't make it. But there is an appearance in the staff report that this is the finding of fact, and you have to either vote it up or vote it down. That's the impression. I'm not telling that's my perception. It may not be anybody else's. But there's kind of this underlying current that, well, this is the finding of fact. I think it would be better if we understand that the planning commission is the ultimate finder of fact. And it may be symbolic, but I'm wondering if even in staff reports, the analysis and then it says, because I was just looking at one, it says finding of fact. And then the approved motion is we adopt the council report, or we adopt the staff report. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better, and maybe it's only symbolic, and maybe I'm just way off base, and you can tell me if I am. But really, those findings of facts are proposed findings of fact. They're not a finding of fact. This is what the staff sees as the finding of fact, but the ultimate determiner of the finding of fact is the planning commission or the city council. And I can tell you from my perspective on being on the city council or on the planning commission, there are times that and that I think people feel like, well, I have to adopt this lock, stock, and barrel, and there's no instruction on, and I think that the council can work on this, and because we can put this into ordinance, by the way. But if it meets 9 of the 10 criteria, should the planning commission approve it or make a favorable recommendation? But I think that in some ways, I'm not sure the planning commission has ever felt that they've, and I know we've changed, we've dealt with some things when I was on the planning commission, and we rejected some things because we said it specifically didn't meet a finding of fact. But it's just one of those, it may be more symbolic, but anyway, you can see where I'm going with that. And so I'm not going to ramble on anymore, but you can see where I might be going with that, is that the training for the planning commission and staff reports may be better if it says proposed finding, and instruct the planning commission that they are adopting those findings of the proposed findings of fact, and that the planning commission has the ability to modify those findings of fact. And if that means, and I have to tell you, I think there's a pressure, and I will include this, and I think there's a pressure that we have to get it done tonight. If we decided to continue an action, or you looked at it more than once, there's something wrong with the planning commission. There's something wrong with the council, because you're not getting this done fast. And you saw that in the survey. You're not getting this done fast enough. You're not getting these things done. And the fact of the matter is that we want to get them done, but we want to get them done right. And if that means that we delay it a meeting or two to adjust things and amend things, but I will tell you that on the planning commission, trying to say, hey, you know what, this doesn't meet the finding of fact, and here's why, and then you're trying to craft stuff on the dais and those kind of things, it makes it difficult to do other than, well, we have to get it done tonight. And I do think that there's a pressure there of, we have to get it done tonight. We have to get it done before this deadline. We have to get it done. And LUDMA doesn't require a deadline, but everybody seems to think that once it hit the planning commission, then it's got to be done tonight. And it's got to go to the city council, and it's got to be done the next week at city council. And unfortunately, I think we need to change that mindset, that it doesn't have to be done right then and there. There may be some pressure. I mean, we saw one. Project Megatron was trying to get some stuff done to meet some certain deadlines. I've got that, but most of these developments don't meet that deadline. And then what we do see is when things pop up, it's like Jones Ranch, and I'm going to use it as an example. Jones Ranch, the ordinance requires a master development agreement to be in front of the planning commission, and maybe we need to change that ordinance. But to me, that the symbology of that, to have the master development agreement for the planning commission, is that means it's done. Well, it wasn't done, because we're on the 12th MDA now, 12th or 13th version of an MDA. And, so maybe we need to take a look at some of the processes, even to get it to the planning commission, to say, and I'm willing to change an ordinance. You know me, we can amend it. If that part of the MDA in some of these ordinances, but I think that it doesn't need to be there, then let's fix that. But if we're not going to fix that, then the MDA needs to be part of the packet, because what that sends to the planning commission is, we're the final recommending body on this. And whether they look at it or not, it's a different story. I don't care. But that's the final administration action on that, is the planning commission not make for lack of a better term, a preliminary recommendation from the planning commission that then goes to that then comes to the city council, and then we spend 6 months on it because we don't even have an MBA. So, you know, there's a couple of the flaws that I see, and a couple of the perceptions of being on the council and the planning commission. And I don't know if any of that helps. So I'm done.
Real quick, we've got a couple more comments and we'll need to move on. So Councilmember Pack had his hand raised, followed by Commissioner Allen.
Well, thank you, Chair. I'll just be brief. I really appreciate how we have so many differing perspectives in a body of 7 planning commissioners or city council members, and that's wonderful. I think then we can view things from different perspectives. I really appreciate also when we have forums like we do this evening where we can try to get on the same page, because I want to make sure that there's no gap of communication, but no unnecessary redundant overlap, and figure out some way that we can bring our perspectives together. When you get applications, for instance, I think of Jordan Fields that we'll be looking at tomorrow. It seems like we've got staff thinking one thing, planning commission another, land use committee another, city council another. The public wants to get involved and are asking for larger noticing radius advertisements. So if we could, I don't have the answer to that, but I just wanted to bring it up because I think it would streamline a lot of our conversations. What are some other specifics, like when we're looking at where should tattoo shops be regulated, and how does that differ from permanent cosmetics? Or, you know, we've got sidewalks that aren't installed. Well, they will be installed when the development continues, but in the meantime, you have children walking to school, you know, not on a sidewalk. What else has been coming up lately? Traffic, you know, with Dutch Brothers Coffee, and how can we better? I think we communicate well, but it's the idea of working in synergy better, so that I'm trying to think of the viewpoint of an applicant when they might be getting different information from all these different entities, and then wondering, well, what really should I do? And they're in a quandary there. So I'm grateful that we work together. I would just like to see us brainstorm a way where we can get on the same page while still having our different viewpoints. Thank you.
Yeah. And Commissioner Allen, I saw your hand went down. Was that me putting it down prematurely, or? Sorry about that. You're up.
I love Councilman Pack's statement. That was awesome. I'm actually going to respond to the previous statement, though. And one thing that I'm thinking may help. So I've been lucky in my time on the commission to be able to observe, Commissioner Badant, Commissioner England in particular are 2 that I've really picked up a lot from as to how to understand a packet and how to move forward on different things. I think Larry has been extremely approachable and very, very helpful through the process as well. One of the things I would recommend in the training aspect of things, if we had a sample staff report that broke it up into each area of the staff report and explained that this is what we're looking at as we read through that. This is something where I've just had to pick it up as I've observed everyone else. And it took a little bit of time to realize that when we're looking at the proposed findings of fact that staff has put in, that's really what we as commissioners ought to be looking at and saying, do we agree with that or not agree with that in each of these situations? Once I came to that realization, I think it's really helped move things forward. So there's a thought. If we have some sort of training on how to read a staff report and what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Councilman Conhay, I want to comment on a couple of those.
Yes, Mayor.
First of all, Councilman Green, thank you for bringing those up. I think you make some very valid points. So I think a couple of adjustments in some of those areas will be beneficial to help the Planning Commission. So I made a couple of notes of those. Second of all, I want to say that the times I've been attending the meetings since I have been the mayor, I haven't noticed the pressure to vote one way or the other. And I think that they are doing a good job on providing the information, and then the Planning Commission has done a great job dissecting the information and making adjustments as they see fit. But as I listen to all this, I take it all back to the training. I think the training is the critical area, and we'll make that a high priority for the commission. And I think part of it is because we made a few changes midterm as well, which didn't catch up with the training that they had when they first started. So we need to make sure that gets there to bring them up to speed quicker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I also like the new word, quickler.
It's quickly and faster.
I'm really hoping that shows up in the minutes. Quickler. All right, so back to Scott. Now we'll talk through the same thing for the city council side of things. And obviously some of these we've kind of, the conversation has jumped ahead a bit, but just in the interest of time, since we do have 24 folks that are participating, if we could keep comments to about 45 seconds. Obviously there are some things that might require a little bit more time, but trying to keep things as short and concise so that as many have an opportunity to share their perspectives as possible would be helpful. So Scott, back to you with the city council process.
So we'll follow the same format that we did with staff and with the planning commission. And again, to go back to my previous comment, it's not just about the numbers. The numbers, of course, are going to be lower in this category, but the ordinances and land use decisions that the council makes are substantial, and it's beholden to the commission and to staff to uphold those laws and regulations that the council adopts. And so you can see the numbers here. Mainly, for my department, the council does a whole lot more than just land use. I know we eat up a lot of your time and a lot of your agendas, but they do carry a substantial amount of weight on the impacts to our community. And so we defer to your judgment, and we as staff, we do our very best as professionals in our various disciplines to get the information to you so that you can make an informed decision. And that's not just staff, but the planning commission. Again, we'll have a chance to talk about that. The council members have been very clear to me, especially recently, that they do very much value the planning commission's recommendations, and they do read those minutes, and they take that into consideration in their weighing of the facts that they're asked to review. So land use wise, you're looking at text amendments, whether it's our zoning code or subdivision codes, mainly sign ordinances, etc. Master development agreements and master development plans, the rezones, general plan amendments, all of those appropriately go to the city council for your consideration and approval. So any questions about some of these applications? Okay.
So real quick, in the interest of time, we had a couple examples that we wanted to talk through where the council has leaned on recommendations from the planning commission. Let's skip this first one, and we'll skip Think Storage, and let's just go to the more recent one, West Jordan Airport, I believe. Was Commissioner Bloom here for that one?
Yes, I'm here.
No, I mean when
No,
when
she
the
was
planning.
not.
Sorry.
Okay, that was
I heard
just
my
before your
name and I
time.
was like, what?
No, I'll give you a little more time before I put you in front of the bus.
No, I
But not much
wasn't
more.
there.
All right,
30
yeah, Scott.
days. Just 30 days. Be ready.
Yeah, but volunteer appointed position versus full-time.
31 days.
She can have 90. She'll get 90.
I think this was before her time on the commission.
It was
Yeah,
before my time.
Scott, let's talk through what happened here. Or actually, no, Alan was going to talk us through this one, wasn't he?
Yes, but I'll
Sure.
defer to Scott if he wants.
No.
All right, so the two that I had picked, one was Think Storage. We're moving to the West Jordan Airport, or WJ Airport, as to not confuse it with the actual airport. And there was a public hearing that the Planning Commission held on April 21st. And for those of you that were on the Planning Commission may remember, this is the 14 acres, about 4,700 west, 6,200 south, that wanted to change from a SC2 commercial zone to an M1 zone for some possible warehousing. When you look at the minutes of the Planning Commission, and I only mention that because that is something that was referenced by the council. The Planning Commission forwarded a positive recommendation with a 5-to-1 vote and 1 abstention to the council for this rezone. When the city council heard it, when you look at the minutes and watch the video, 2 council members, and I neglected to get council member Pack in there, but in the official minutes and in the video on YouTube, Councilmember Green had requested some background from the Planning Commission meeting with some quotes such as I put there, I didn't put enough verbiage in there, but he wanted to see the dialogue that the Planning Commission had. What was the reason for the single no vote from the Planning Commission? And then Councilmember Pack had asked to see information about the dissenting vote on the Planning Commission. So it's a place where in this example, the city council was curious as to why there was a negative vote on the rezone, and the motion to approve the rezone passed the city council on a 5-2 vote, and that was on July 6th. So that is an example where I think the Planning Commission does have impact and influence on city council. And one of the things that we're doing in the council office is now trying to, as we assemble these packets, place the Planning Commission minutes where applicable into the packet so the council can see some of that dialogue that the planning commissioners had in their discussion for the items. So that was one example where the Planning Commission did have influence on the city council. They were curious to know why the no vote and what the dialogue was among you.
And Scott, can you take us to the next slide so we can talk through an opposite example?
So this one is where there was some differences. So on the commercial vehicle ordinance, as you recall, it was ambiguous, and so we're trying to put some structure around the commercial vehicle ordinance. The Planning Commission heard it again, July 21st, 2020. The minutes recorded that there was questions about vehicles, specifically if it's 1.5 ton or larger. That's kind of where the focus that I gathered. The Planning Commission forwarded a favorable recommendation to the City Council with a 6-0 vote. The City Council has several questions about broadening the definitions, that it might have some unintended consequences, including vehicles that we wouldn't think of, the council wouldn't think of. For example, a pickup truck or a utility truck that has a company logo for a home-based plumber or construction, home remodeling. Also, on the earth moving equipment, if you have a bobcat, you've moved in and you're putting some dirt around your property, and you keep a bobcat on your property for a week because you rent it for a week. How does the ordinance apply to that? Was the ordinance attempting to be too restrictive, even though that wasn't the desire? Is the way it was put together too restrictive, and time and place parameters, like what could be allowed and what isn't allowed? So this is where the council was opposite of the Planning Commission, where the council voted 7-0 to return it to staff to be reworked and have it maybe be a little more broad and a little less restrictive in that regard.
So what we wanted to do with those couple of examples was open it up for a little bit of dialogue, so we can ask questions of each other, or share insight, share perspectives. Obviously, more often than not, the City Council and the Planning Commission are pretty well aligned, and the outcome in City Council often follows Planning Commission, but not always. So just want to open it up without diving too much into the specifics of the particulars here, but keeping it at more of a high level. Also looking at the clock, we probably want probably no more than about 7 minutes or so on this slide, so that we can tackle some of the other issues. So again, if we can keep shorter 45-second comments, if at all possible. But we've got David Pack with his hand raised, followed by, Councilmember Pack, followed by Councilmember Lamb, and then would love to hear from some of the Planning Commission as well as to thoughts on this. Councilmember Pack.
Great, thank you, Chair. I was so appreciative when I served on Planning Commission when City Council members took the time to read through packets, and I'd even get a couple of phone calls now and then. Hey, could you help clarify that? And of course, I want to give the same deference and respect, recognizing, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that everyone has a different point of view. And so I'm grateful that we can all work in it together. And yes, where I was befuddled when I served on Planning Commission, and also now with this example that you mentioned, I'm trying to figure out, why when I was on Planning Commission, usually, as you mentioned, it worked out basically the same, but there were 1 or 2 instances where Planning Commission might approve something unanimously, and then it was unanimous the other way with City Council. So looking into this one that you've mentioned, as I read through the minutes and I think about our conversation on City Council, and please correct me if anybody has any difference of opinion, it seemed like because of our backgrounds that are different, that different questions were posed in the City Council meeting versus what was asked in the Planning Commission meeting. And so then different information cropped up, and we came up with, oh yeah, but what about this? Oh yeah, you're right, what about that? That might not have otherwise come up in the Planning Commission meeting. Not that anything was missed or looked over, it's just there were different ideas that we were fleshing out. So I was just curious if anyone else felt that same way. It's certainly not that we don't appreciate and respect what the Planning Commission's findings were. It just seemed like the conversation took a different turn and we were addressing different issues. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Chair McConaughey. Can you guys hear me?
It's a little soft, but yeah.
How about now?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
I've got this funky microphone thing going on here. So, so from watching the Planning Commission, the City Council before I was on the City Council, and then participating in both now, I've seen both perspectives. We have on our council right now, we have a few former planning commissioners on our council that understand what goes into that. For me, the thing I've always seen with the Planning Commission is I've never felt like they have had to make a choice politically. They look at what's good for the city. They look at the rules, they look at the regulations, and they make their vote. And I'm appreciative of that. Unfortunately, when it goes to the City Council, there is a little bit of political that happens. Unfortunately, because a lot of times, I'm not saying our council, but I've seen councils before, they will make decisions based on political needs or political whatever. So the one thing I want to say is, and I've always felt this way, whatever decisions the Planning Commission makes versus the City Council, I've never felt, like it doesn't really matter, in the sense that, oh, why didn't they vote for it when we voted for it? And so I don't look at it that way. I look at it like the Planning Commission looks at it really strongly. They know what's going on. They understand it. And then when it comes to us, we have to make a kind of a different decision when it goes from there. In this instance, I do remember this when it came, and the way the Planning Commission looks at it, in my mind, is way different than what we look at it as a City Council and the effects of it. And so I just want to kind of put that out there as me, as a member of the City Council and as a member of this community. I want to thank the Planning Commission for the work that they put into the Planning Commission each time, because this is really important when it comes to us, because we do look at what you guys have decided. We do look at what is going to happen for the future of the city. And Matt, I know you're on there. I can't see your video right now, but I've seen Matt do this over and over again. And Matt and the other people on the planning commission, you do a great job of making sure that we have the information we need so that when we need to make a decision that we can make that. So those are just my 10 cents.
Councilmember Green, and then Jay Thomas, following Commissioner Thomas, we've got Chair Quinney. Following Chair Quinney, we have Commissioner England.
So I want to ask a question, and it's based on the commercial vehicle ordinance, but it's not necessarily the commercial vehicle ordinance. But the question that I'd ask the Planning Commission is, and this is just the topic of discussion, did you feel like you had the ability to explore the policy implications of the commercial vehicle ordinance, or you got the draft ordinance and felt that, okay, we couldn't amend it, we couldn't look at it, we couldn't talk about it, and that would be my question is to the Planning Commission is, how much empowerment did you feel to address sorry, the policy implications of the commercial vehicle ordinance, or was it just a here's a proposed text amendment, we want you to approve it? So that would be, it was just a question to spur discussion that maybe a couple of the planning commissioners can address.
Let's see, starting with Commissioner Thomas. Jay, that's you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to unmute myself, sorry. Part of it is the information that we received, and maybe there wasn't clarity, on at least on my mind, of kind of what direction you guys wanted or what you were asking. I thought the information that was provided, we voted what we thought was, legitimate and stuff, but I can see where, we're just kind of taking the black and white, this is what it is, and this is what it should be. But if that's not the case, then there probably needs to be a little bit more into the direction when we're given those packets.
And I'm going to jump in here real quick before Chair Quinney, but this has been the subject of a number of conversations, at least with myself and Vice Chair Green, wanting to make sure that the Planning Commission and the training that's received realizes that you're not limited to just what's on that paper. If you feel like there's something missing, something broader, if we need to expand, or maybe when focus needs to be narrowed, you can come back to the city council with a recommendation saying, you know what, this whole thing needs to be reconsidered, kind of like we did with this one. Rather than looking at just what's on the paper, you have leeway many times to make a recommendation beyond the four corners of that paper. Anyway, sorry. Commissioner Quinney.
Yeah, I think what Councilmember Green was talking about, just I don't know that in this specific to this one, but I don't know that we've ever felt pressure on any of these. I think that we don't have as wide a scope as the council does. We don't have all of the facts sometimes, and sometimes that's maybe we didn't do enough research of our own. Sometimes there's just information that we're not aware of or experience. A lot of times, it was alluded to in the previous discussion that, or I think it was Commissioner Pack said, or Councilmember Pack said, you start talking and you get one person's perspective and it brings up another perspective. And so our 7 perspectives are not always going to be the same as someone else's. And for the sake of dialogue, I actually miss having, Councilmember Green sitting next to me, because, he's a little bit long-winded sometimes, but he was really good at spurring on a conversation that got me thinking about things that I hadn't considered previous. So I don't know that we ever feel pressure. I think sometimes there might be some time constraints and we don't want to be there all night discussing, text ordinances. But I think a lot of it has to do with the other part of it, as was mentioned, we don't get into the political component of the conversation. And sometimes we look at this as a black and white thing, and sometimes that political component that you guys can consider falls into that gray area that is not really under our purview.
Commissioner England, followed by Commissioner Allen.
think the best way to sum it up from my perspective has been micro and macro. I think we really look at the staff report, and I look at the findings of fact as staff's finding of fact, and that we as the planning commission are to find what the conclusions of the law are. And, we're kind of painted into this little tiny box and we're looking at the small picture. Whereas you as a city council are looking at the big picture. So that's just my perspective on any of this. Not that anybody's right, wrong, or indifferent. I think there's obviously some improvement to be made on our end on the training perspective. I'm just barely feeling comfortable a couple years into this. But yeah, I think the best way to sum it up is, again, just the micro and macro, just big picture, small picture. That's all I got.
Commissioner Allen.
Yeah, I think a large part of it is we don't have the public input. I don't have any public calling me and saying, hey, there's a problem here on this. So we often don't hear that aspect of it. And maybe a little more close to home on the planning commission portion of it, I often feel like we don't promote the discussion. And maybe that's just my own inadequacy to step forward and say, hey, let's talk about this. But I almost feel like if we open it up and said, buzz in within the next 30 seconds with any conversation, after that 30 seconds is over, we'll entertain a motion. That would help me at least, because I often take a little bit of time to think through it. And when put on the spot, the questions don't really come out well. So just one thought.
I'm stalling for a second, hoping to see Councilmember Green's hand go up again. He made a comment earlier. Kelvin, you talked earlier about making the idea that the Planning Commission could make either favorable or unfavorable recommendation to council, but then also add items for consideration that the council might want to consider. Did you want to spend 30 seconds or so and hit on that?
Well, I think sometimes, and this is that once again, this goes back to my perception with as sitting on the planning commission, that we either had to make a favorable recommendation or an unfavorable recommendation to the city council. And it didn't feel like maybe that we were empowered to say, hey, you know what, this is a good project based on what we see, but we also, and I think that I would take Commissioner England's perspective and say, what are the macro things that the planning commission sees that we ought to? And I would tell you that from my perspective, yes, the ordinance is written in a specific way, and maybe you are painted into a corner with finding the micro, but what are your macro perceptions? And there's nothing wrong with putting those, in my mind, there's nothing wrong with putting those in the record. And if we need to change the ordinance to not paint you in a corner, as Commissioner England used the term, and focus on the micro and help give you some macro, I'm willing to do that. But yeah, anything that you could provide us, if you're willing, I think it's going to help us in the long run for the perspective, because sometimes, Commissioner Allen, you said you don't get a lot of public input. Well, you know what? Sometimes neither do we. We get as much public input in some of those public hearings as you do. And the input from the public might be the 7 of you. And so, as you're looking at the micro versus macro, I would tell my perception is, if you see a problem with the ordinance that it handcuffs you, tell us. And if you want to give us the macro perspectives, please tell us. So yes, if you want to make recommendations to the council that are above and beyond just favorable and unfavorable, I'd say at least I can't speak for all 7 members, but I would venture to guess that at least 5 of us would say that's what we need.
Yeah, when I look at the minutes, I look especially for the portion where the motion's being made. So even if there's like a recommendation that's not part of the motion, like for example, someone says move to make a favorable recommendation, second, any discussion to the motion, I think it would be beneficial for the council to consider X, Y, and Z. For me, that's going to be a flag that you've done your duty and provided a recommendation, but that's really going to catch my attention, seeing something in that portion where somebody's adding commentary to a motion there. Something else for us to consider that might be a little bit broader than the specific issue or suggested changes to code and whatnot. Which, seeing no other hands, brings us to the next section. Let's jump to number 26, slide number 26, if we could, Scott. Yeah, we're going to skip this for time.
Yep. Okay, specific code.
Yes, specific portions of code. So you'll also find in the chat a link. You can punch this into your phone. It's honestly, it's easier to have it up on the phone unless you've got like a multi-screen setup. But there's some questions that Scott's going to throw out, and this will be a little bit quicker way to hear from everybody. So is there anybody who is not seeing the link for the polling questions? All right, if you run into problems, please let us know. But Scott, do you want to start talking us through with the test?
Yes, so the first one is to make sure that everybody can log in. We've got I want to see, sorry. I get Councilman Chair, it's hard to navigate multiple things at once here.
I'm telling you, you need at least 2 more screens, maybe 3.
I know.
You know, you're in trouble when 4 screens isn't enough, Scott.
What I want to see on this screen is the number 14. I want to make sure that we get everybody's voices are heard here. So we've got 7.
I would say 15 if the mayor would like to join in, he's definitely welcome to.
All right.
You'll be less than 15 as Councilmember Jacob is having technical difficulties.
Is anybody needing some direction?
I'm trying to see. Are you trying to do it from phone or from laptop?
Phone. From the phone.
Yeah, pollev.com. And then when you...
I'm going to text you. Just because this is the same one that comes up repeatedly, we don't really want to...
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I shot you a text with that, Chad, so you should have that just to be sure.
Is anybody else having technical difficulties?
Oh, dang it. I sent Scott the wrong link.
So as we're figuring that out, as we bounce to the next poll, it'll be an open-ended question. So we didn't want to hem you in or predetermine or pre-assume certain things that the council or the commission would like us to prioritize.
It looks like Councilmember Jacob has been able to make it back as well.
Great.
So I'm going to resend that in the chat. So he should be able to see it because he would have missed it previously. All right, hit the little blue hand in the, if you could raise the blue hand to let me know if you're not seeing this, I can help you out. All right, well, let's go for it.
All right. Okay, so like I said, now that you are kind of logged into the Poll EV system, we're going to solicit some feedback from the council and commission regarding items that we need to consider updating regarding the code specifically. And this is sort of to kind of prime the pump of discussion, spark some ideas. Councilman McConaughey, do you want me to go through these first, or do you want us to go to the Poll EV and circle back?
Yeah, so let's start with these real quick. And just to give you a little bit of a background, when we shot out that survey before the meeting, we asked if there were places of code that you felt were clunky that may need to be revisited. We captured what we could from that, and we're going to go through and prioritize to see what's on the top of people's list, but also want to see what else is out there, what other ideas have come up. So these are just examples of items that have already been suggested. So Scott, do you want to talk through what these are, just to kind of get the juices flowing as you're thinking about as people are thinking about what to submit on the next survey question?
So bullet number 1, conditional uses in our professional office zones. I'm not quite sure what the specific issue is with that, whether there were too many or too little conditional uses allowed in our professional office zone. But somebody did mention that on the survey. Personally, I don't have any background on that. So if you did make that comment and wanted to bring that up later, we can do that. Bay door screening in our industrial areas, that's always been a thorn in the staff and planning commission side. There is, I think, a time and a place for aesthetics, but when you get an Amazon building, for example, where you have nearly 100 bay doors, screening sometimes it's kind of interesting that there isn't more latitude given to either the staff or to the planning commission on that particular item. Commercial vehicle ordinance, we have already talked a little bit about that this evening. That continues to be a discussion point, especially with the council. Solar panels in our residential districts, as you recall, that came to a head earlier this year as we had a resident put up a very large solar array in their backyard, and very much had impacts to surrounding neighbors. Don't know if we need to circle back. We don't get very many of those applications, but we may in the future. So we've recently talked about parking in our transit-oriented development zones. Is it appropriate to match the parking requirements in our other multifamily developments, or should they be slightly amended? That's a good conversation that we could have. Wall signs, there's some limitations on that. In general, I'll just indicate that if I had an unlimited amount of staff resources in not only my department, but the city attorney's office, I would love to jump in and tackle our sign ordinance. I think Councilman Green would enjoy that as well. Landscaping code, that continues to come up as it should. There's a discussion about aesthetics, water conservation. There's a lot of different elements and nuance to our landscaping code, and we'd love to provide more education and have more dialogue with that. Setbacks, I'm not quite sure what the specific concern or comment was in regard to setbacks. I'm assuming that's for a very specific zone because we have different setbacks
Yeah.
for different zones.
This was some of the setbacks in residential building tend to leave some neighborhoods feeling like they're cookie cutter and they don't allow for differentiation between homes. This is something we get around this in some of the PC zoning projects, and the outcome's usually higher quality product because of that. Wondering if this is something that needs to be reviewed. The other one that was mentioned, conditional use for PO.
Yes.
That the detail on that one was personal care services such as nail salons, barbershop, estheticians, etc. Require an administrative conditional use permit and a business license. These businesses, particularly small ones, want to locate in PO zones, particularly along Redwood Road for the cheaper lease rates. But there are extra permit requirements and costs. This is probably a good one for Chris Pangra as well. But yeah, that was the comment on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a context with that. Specifically, those office complexes along Redwood Road historically have been underparked, and there have been some spillover impacts that may have necessitated or been a catalyst to that requirement. So, but yeah, we're happy to circle back and look at that. Zoning definitions, yeah, if there are any enhancements or clarifications to the definitions in Title 13, yeah, we welcome those. It helps administer the code more consistently, and it certainly helps staff substantially. So any other things that you'd like me to cover, Councilman McConaughey?
Now, hopefully that was enough to show you kind of like the broad array of things that were thrown out during the survey. So if there are parts of code that feel kind of clunky, we'd like to get those all thrown out and then kind of prioritize so that we can start the process and proactively have staff work with the Planning Commission to find what changes need to be made and then bring it to the City Council so that we can be making these changes as we see that there's a need rather than waiting for some outside event to push us.
Okay. Very good. So yeah, and we could go on and on and on. We in my department keep a list, a big Excel spreadsheet of code sections that we would like to fix and correct. But yeah, this paints a general picture. In addition, and I don't want to go too far off in the weeds here, but the council has indicated that it's needed to update our general plan. So code amendments and updating our general plan are two very important things that we should look to be updating in the next several years. So here's the question.
Hey, Scott, can I ask one question before you go?
Sure.
Since you just asked it, which member of the Planning Commission is the one that's the liaison to the General Plan Committee?
So we brought that up the last Planning Commission, and maybe a chairman.
Hatch.
It's Trish Hatch.
Yep.
Thank you.
So yeah, that is moving forward. I heard from Alan earlier today that that committee will be firing up soon, which is great to hear. So here's the question: what are clunky parts of the code that you recommend we amend? And so this is going to be open-ended. You can type in whatever you feel is most important to you. You can enter multiple times into your poll EV, and then you can give whatever you see on your screen a thumbs up or thumbs down, and that will help us prioritize these various things that you will be entering in. So this is live and interactive, and we'll see how this goes. And there will be some duplication. So if you can keep, yeah, there you go, landscaping. I'm glad eliminate multiple commercial zones. I'm glad whoever put that on there, thank you. I should have mentioned that on the previous slide.
So Scott, quick question for you. As we're adding these, if there's something on that previous list that strikes a chord with us, do we need to add that here, or will that automatically be incorporated?
No, I think we won't ignore it for sure, because those are things that have been brought up multiple times in the past. But
For this exercise, it's not, those items we went through are not already included though, right?
they are not. So
Okay.
if you want that part of the discussion here, please type that in. So I think I'll log in because I can only see what's on my screen, which is the top 4.
So, Councilman McConaughey, can I say something really quickly?
Yeah, fire away.
The density, the density definition would be more of a general plan item. So it needs to probably be set in the general plan, and then the zones would correspond with that density requirement. So I think that's a perfect time that the general plan's being updated also. There's really not a way to codify that
Beautiful.
as of yet. So
No, that's a good point. There's different processes for different elements. So I think here, as long as we capture them, we can rely on staff to find the proper route for achieving that.
This is a great list.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just give it another 60 seconds or so.
Really? Bay door screening is at the bottom of the list? Come on. All right. No, this is a prioritization. I get it.
And quick comment on the voting up and down. Just up is you think it needs to be discussed. Down is not so much.
Right. Yep.
Okay, about 15 seconds to go.
Here.
All right, 5 seconds. Okay, and with that, we will conclude the not voting, the straw polling. All right, Scott.
Okay. Should we just? I guess you allocated a certain amount of time for this discussion.
Yeah. So let's quickly look through those that were submitted and where they fall, just so we can see the full field, and then we'll talk about high level, probably just the first top 2, maybe 3.
Okay. So you want me to run through that full list? Sorry, you kind of broke up.
Yeah, so we've got the landscape ordinance, specifically with water conservation, discussing density in residential zones, eliminating multiple commercial zones, keeping green space in PC. Let's keep going down. Does that scroll work on there?
Not on this slide. Well,
off on the right. It may be hidden by chat or something like that.
It still works on the results screen though. You can do it on your own.
But I can screen here too. I think for the recording.
Yeah, for those who are watching online, and so we can see it later. So landscaping in general, I'll bet you that's tied into the other one up above.
Yep.
Residential solar panel height, cast walls, standardizing them with how the city mold, elimination of cap and grade, revisiting cap and grade. So fence height on retaining walls. Base screening, at least it came out at 0, and it wasn't the 4 or 5 negative. That was one that Scott's brought up a couple times. We've got wall plane differentiation of warehouse zones that was suggested maybe not. SHO is the only exemption to cap and grade as well, and then eliminate administrative conditional use. All right.
Okay, very good.
So let's start at the top, and we'll take, I'd say, let's try and keep it pretty high level without getting into, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts, meaning I don't want to be pulling up code, looking through specifics and saying, well, this sentence would really do better over here, and we should change these 3 words, and you know what, this section should be struck. At a higher level, so staff can understand what it is overall, the philosophy that we're looking for. We want to talk philosophy, not so much, I forget what the word is when you're talking about the makeup of the verbiage and the phrases and the punctuation that's in there, but really we want to be higher level philosophy with landscaping and ordinances. What is it that you would like to see addressed? What do you feel needs to be changed? So as staff goes back and works on this, what would you tell them? These are the things I would like to focus on. And if you could, again, keep your comments to about 45 seconds if possible. We'll start with Councilmember Whitelock, and then we're going to go to Commissioner England. And those are the only 2 hands that are up so far. So, Councilmember Whitelock.
So what I would like staff to work on is, I think our code needs to change. I think that local scaping is superior to exerscaping, partly because when you say that, people think rocks. And what rocks do is they create more of a desert environment. If we don't have plants, it alters our rain, actually. We need plants to keep rain in our valley. And we're a desert, so we don't get a lot of that anyway. So anything that we can do to help, we should be doing. Now, do they need to be water guzzling? No, they need to be water wise because, again, we live in a desert. But I think when we encourage and allow people to fill their front yards with rocks, that hurts our ecosystem. So that's what I'd like to see addressed.
Commissioner England.
Some key words here: water wise, plants and trees that discourage microclimates, incentivizing decreasing water usage. And what I don't like seeing is driving down 90th South every morning and seeing all the sprinklers on and all these park strips, these commercial zones for grass that just never gets used. Yes, it looks great when it's green, but nobody's ever sitting on it. I mean, it's just a waste of water. So that's it.
Councilmember Green.
So I just did a quick search in the city code, and you can't believe the number of times and the number of different sections landscape shows up. I mean, I didn't think I'd find that many, but it's in chapter 4, it's in chapter 13, it's in chapter 14. It's in multiple sections in 13 and 14. And I think we could probably come up with a better landscape ordinance that defines what we're really intending to do without having to have it in 40 places in the code as well. So that if somebody says, like Commissioner England just said, hey, you know, we have all this grass in places that people can't use. is there a better way to landscape, and is there a better way to capture that in all in one spot? So that would be my comment.
I have a comment.
Oh, who is that?
This is Pamela. Sorry, I don't
Commissioner
have a,
Bloom.
Yes, we have a conservation garden park here in West Jordan that educates the public and companies on the best way to landscape for our environment. We should and we could rely on them for education to help us and guide us in what we need to do for the code.
Any other comments or pain points? Any other specifics? And when I say specifics, again, not nuts and bolts, but specific philosophies that you'd like to see brought back from staff. I like how Councilmember Whitelock pointed out the idea of language that encourages plants, but water-wise. We're trying to steer away from the idea of we want all rocks. I think something like that is helpful. It looks like Commissioner Allen, your comment. Sorry, I hit the wrong button and try to hit lower hand, and I think I muted you. Sorry.
All right. Am I good now?
There you go. Yes.
I'm thinking back to recent commission meetings. There's two things that came up that I can think of. One was I feel that the buffer in one situation was a little bit wider than it probably needed to be. And in the other, discussion about trees and proximity to entryways. I think I'd like to see a little bit more flexibility in that kind of a thing when it comes to staff and discussion with the council and the commission.
Any other thoughts about the landscape ordinance before we move on? There were 12 people that hit the thumbs up button there. So if your thought hasn't already been shared, please feel free to do so.
I'll go ahead and add my comment without raising my hand, if that's okay, Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. I completely agree with Councilmember Whitelock. I really believe we need local scaping, not xeriscaping, and we need to focus on desert-wise plants, but not rocks.
Beautiful.
I'm going to pitch in here a second. I like the idea of letting the businesses have flexibility. Right now, we don't permit them to have flexibility. They understand their needs better than we do oftentimes and how their uses are going to be. Give them some flexibility to design their own.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
The one issue I would take with giving them flexibility on that is that you could have one commercial parcel that has full landscaping, the next one has xeriscaping, the next one has local scaping. And just as, driving down 90th South, I wouldn't want to see 3, 4, or 5 different kinds of landscaping. I'd rather be consistent. So, maybe allow flexibility, but we can't just let it be the wild, wild west.
I agree. I'm thinking flexibility similar to how they look in their design of their building. So if the buildings are all in like a strip mall, then that would be more limited. But if it's separate buildings for separate type of uses, I'm thinking more like from industrial to retail to office. Like that. Yes, I agree. Good point. Good clarification.
So Councilmember Green, you can probably refresh my memory on this one. The City Council has a land use committee. Who are the folks that are on that land use committee?
Me, Councilmember Whitelock, and Councilmember Jacob.
Beautiful.
Councilmember Jacob is the chair.
And this was the one where Commissioner Hatch is the liaison. Was that right from the Planning Commission?
No, the general plan committee is me, Councilmember Whitelock, and Councilmember Jacob, and I'm the chair. So it's the same 3 people, only 2 different chairs.
So my thought is we might get a little bit further along if instead of just kicking this back to staff and saying, come back with something, if we task one of the council committees to work with them. Would this be more appropriate for the land use committee since we're talking ordinances rather than, or would this be more appropriate for general plan committee? Thoughts?
I think if you want, Chair, if you want to see some change, it needs to happen in the code. The general plan is just a guide. Certainly, there could be some discussion when the general plan committee gets up and going and talks about, the environmental impacts and so forth. But I would definitely like to follow up with that committee, because it sounds like we have flexibility in the code right now. Often people will take the path of of least resistance. It's faster just to throw turf down. For example, in our code right now, on a residential lot, you're required to have 40% of your front yard has to be living, ground cover. Well, most people think that has to be turf. Well, no, that could be planter beds, that can be shrubs, that can be, there's a lot of local scapes that could be done within the parameters of our code, but it's not required. And so what I'm hearing from the council is that perhaps local scapes should be more of a requirement rather than just an option. But I don't know, that's kind of what I'm hearing.
So I would like to ask if the council's land use committee would be willing to work with staff on modifications here, and then also ask if there are either 2 or 3 members of the planning commission who would also like to be engaged with that committee to help make recommendations that'll be brought back.
I wouldn't mind.
Who is that said that?
Pamela Bloom.
Okay, so Commissioner Bloom is game.
Pamela,
How
just
quickly
an
is this going to
FYI
happen?
for Pamela. Chris can't see all of us on his screen. So if you really want him to see your hand, push the little participant thing and raise it there.
I don't have it. It's not focused on mine. I have it up. It's like blacked out. Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties with it.
Shoot.
Okay, so we've also got Commissioner Allen and Commissioner, wait, Jay, your hand popped up and then disappeared. Were you volunteering or commenting there, or slip of the mouse?
No, I would be interested in volunteering.
All right, so Jay and Ammon and Pamela, 3 of you guys are game?
Sounds great. Do we know when they meet?
Nope, we'll leave it to the chair of the council's land use committee to reach out to everybody, find a good time to discuss this particular issue, and also find a time that works with staff so that we can start working on making some progress there. Beautiful. Okay, anything else before we move on to density? All right, let's move on to density. Redefine density in residential zones. What does it mean by low, medium, or high? Who'd like to talk to this one and give kind of like the high level philosophy? Councilmember Jacob.
Thanks. Yeah, I did. Excuse me. I did type this one in, and it was the thought behind it is we have people come out to city council meetings and planning commission meetings to protest high density because they see, oh, you're wanting to put in medium or high density, not realizing that it doesn't mean what people necessarily think it means in somebody's head. We often see, we have medium density and people think, well, that's townhomes, when in reality, no, that's actually most of our single family neighborhoods fall into that category. Most people, when driving through these single family neighborhoods, don't think of medium density. They think of low density because it's a single family home with a front yard and a backyard and trees, and it doesn't look like medium or high density, but it might be. I think if we redefine the code to mean what the more colloquial definitions are, high density is apartments or very dense, potentially townhomes, but townhomes could also fall into medium density. And then single family homes, generally speaking, would fall into low density, although there might be some very dense neighborhoods like some of the cottage developments and things that might bleed into that medium density category in most people's minds. So R18 and R110 right now in our code are medium density, and I think most people in would think that those are low density. So that's what I'm going with. That is just rethinking that kind of thing.
Councilmember Green, followed by Commissioner Thomas.
I know when I was on the, I think it was on when I was on the Planning Commission, Larry can remind me of this one. I don't remember. The years run in together. But we had actually talked, and I think Councilmember Jacob is right. We had actually talked about redesignating the R110 as a low, at least R110 as a low density, and not as a medium density. I'm not sure I'd want to go with R18, but that's a particular one with the policy. But yeah, I don't think we have. I think that Zach is right. We have these different perceptions of what low, medium, and high are. I was in San Diego over the weekend, and I'm looking at some of their apartment towers that they built just off the harbor. And in any definition of density in West Jordan City, they would be uber ultra high, super duper high density, because we don't even go that high in density. You know, when they've got a couple hundred units to the
4,000 units per acre.
Yeah, because they've gone up 30 stories. Our 70 units an acre is pretty low to that. So yeah, I agree with Councilmember Jacob that we probably do need to come up with a clear definition of what high, medium, low is, and then we need to do a good job of ensuring that the public understands what, because I think Zach is right that the high density right now is equated to apartments, and I'm not sure that that's what we really want it to equate to. But when anybody talks about high density, they equate it to rentals, and I'm not sure that's necessarily what we wanted either.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Kind of echo a little bit about that, but maybe even expand upon it a little bit, because I agree that low density, high density, everybody thinks is, well, high density, they think apartments complex, and our history with our city kind of leads to believe that. But you can still have some high density single family homes, which may or may not be appropriate. I know one of the big things that comes up when you just talk high density is traffic and coming in and out of subdivisions. And so a single family high density is still going to be an issue. However, it may not be as big as issue as an apartment complex. And maybe we can even expand a little bit upon that to a single family compared to multi-dwellings, and maybe be a little bit more clear on that.
All right, thank you. Similar to what we talked about with the landscaping ordinance and water conservation, if we get a group together to help work with staff as we determine how that would best be modified, based on Larry's comment earlier, I'm guessing that's going to be the general plan committee that would be best suited for that. And I see Scott nodding his head.
Yeah, on this one, I think we let the general plan committee tackle that one. And then if we need some specific, does that cascades and we need some specific zoning ordinances, then we can look at that.
Yeah, and I think that would probably also be the same group for at least initial conversations about elimination of multiple commercial zones. So before we jump to eliminate multiple commercial zones, with the land use committee, we've already got 3 members of the council. Then we've got, we do have the liaison there. Is it just 1 member of the planning commission?
So council chair, so we've got the council's subcommittee on the general plan, and then we will have our general plan committee. I think
Council subcommittee is what I'm looking for, not the general plan committee with the 15 folks.
All right. Yeah.
This would be.
Yeah, Commissioner Hatch is the planning commission's liaison to the
general plan committee. Okay. Okay, so we've got the 3 members from the city council on the council's general plan committee. Who from the planning commission would like to participate in the conversations about fixing density definitions? Is that Matt? Is that saying yes, you're interested, or is that a comment that I was a little bit late to catch?
Sort of both. Well, so the reason why I raised my hand, I'd like to be part of any of these. This one, the commercial one, etc. However, my term as a planning commissioner expires in just over 3 months, and so I don't know if that matters as me carrying over as a non-planning commissioner starting next year, because I doubt any of this is resolved in the next 3 months. So if it doesn't matter that it expires in 3 months, then count me in for some of these. If it does, then I'll just sit back and enjoy the show.
You don't stop doing your job because you've only got 3 months left. So we can figure out the details of the transition at that time. But if you want to be involved, by all means, jump on in now. So we'll put your name on that.
Count me in on this one and the commercial zones.
Okay, and Commissioner Hatch.
I was just going to say, if you need me to be a liaison to the liaison, I could liaison with this as well and take it back to the general plan committee.
I think the appropriate term is assistant to the liaison.
Awesome. So we'll add your name here as well. And we'll let that group determine what information needs to go between the City Council Planning Commission and the General Plan Committee. We'll let you guys figure out what needs to happen there. Is there anybody else from the Planning Commission who would like to be involved with that conversation? We've got 2. All right, keep thinking about it. But while you're thinking, we'll go on to number 3, and this will be the last topic to brainstorm about. But eliminate multiple commercial zones. Who would like to speak to the philosophy behind this one? Councilmember Green.
If I can unmute my computer. I think that as we've had some discussions and maybe Chris Pangura can jump in here too. I think that, some of our zoning is SC1, SC2, SC3, and there's an automatic implication that it's a shopping center, and people might get turned away from that when they realize, oh, I have to deal with shopping centers. And it is a better generic commercial, and I'm going to use the term form-based commercial zone that we allow based on certain criteria, and there are some ordinances out there in other cities that do a form-based commercial zone, that in a commercial zone you can do just about what you want as long as it meets the right form and it meets certain parameters. And I'm not suggesting any manufacturing in a neighborhood, but what I am suggesting, and I've used this example before with a couple other people, just across the street from the neighborhood that Jay and I and Chad live in, Jordan Valley Water, or the Jordan Valley Reclamation or South Valley Reclamation's got 10 acres of property there, and it's right now zoned research park or something like that. And the question would be is, would it matter? I don't think we want a gas station there, but if you had restaurants and a walkable, you had doctor's offices, and you had professional office buildings, and you had a myriad of commercial that wouldn't necessarily meet the research park. Is that what we want to increase the viability of the area, of any commercial area, is more of a mixed commercial, not focused on retail, and that meets the character of the neighborhood? And if so, then we could probably eliminate a whole ton of commercial zones and just create one. So that would be my thought.
Any other thoughts or comments on this one? Again, there were 9 that were supportive of that. So any other perspectives you'd like to share? Commissioner Quinney.
Got to unmute first. I don't think I have anything additional. I agree with Commissioner Green. I think anywhere we can eliminate, multiple zones and make things a little bit more simple, and then allow us to get creative with the developers is a great idea. I think that we need to promote more collaboration from the beginning of this process through the end of this process. So I support this and would be happy to participate in any outside conversations on this that are necessary.
All right. Well, similar to the first 2, I think it'd be helpful to have a few of the city council members working with a few of the planning commissioners and staff. And I'm guessing this would just go right in line with the council's general plan committee. So same folks from the last one, also willing to address this one as well.
Or
Commissioner
land use,
Allen.
either one.
Yeah, there's a huge code component, zoning ordinance component to this, as well as the general plan.
So Scott, what's your thought? Where would this best fit?
It fits in both, but I think the most appropriate would be the land use, since that's more code focused.
So the same land use group want to attack this one then? Local scaping along with multiple commercial zones?
I have no problems with that.
I'm not hearing any other no's. Commissioner Allen, you had your hand up a second ago.
I was just going to say, sounds reasonable to me. I'm happy to be on those 2 or all 3, whatever works best.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, so I know Councilmember Jacob had to duck out. He made the comment earlier that it sounds like we've definitely got a couple of meetings worth of topics to cover. So the hope is that from here, we'll be able to work with staff to start proactively making some of these modifications, starting them through the process. We're stopping at just 3 because, as Scott mentioned at the onset, there is a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, especially with 2 of those larger developments out on the west side that are going to be taking a significant amount of time and resources. But we will start working on these as well. And that's why we want to primarily focus on the group with the city council members and planning commissioners, so that we can help staff kind of see the direction that we want to go, and we can be there, help guide the process. Hopefully that will help speed things along and prevent too much rework. And then as Commissioner Quinney pointed out, it'll definitely take some time. We may not, probably won't be done with all 3 of these by the end of the year, but we do want to have made substantial progress so that by the time that we meet again, which will probably, if history holds, next combined meeting will likely be in April. We want to have substantial progress and then see how close we are to buttoning those up, and we can revisit the topics that are on this list, see if those next items 4, 5, and 6 are still the priority, or if we need to go a different direction if things have changed. So that's the thought as to where we go from here.
Hey, Chris, the one thing that I think we can do is if Commissioner Quinney wants to continue to help work on some of those issues after his term eliminates, I believe the ordinance and the council allows us to appoint citizens to work with committees to do that. So if Matt wants to continue to work with us after his term ends, I'm more than willing to figure out the appointment process to continue to work with the council on that particular issue.
Yeah, and I don't want to open up a can of worms, but I think I may just go ahead and start to crack it just a little bit. But with the change in form of government, where these are now mayoral appointments, I wonder about the appropriateness of code with the limitation, because other mayoral appointments don't necessarily have a limitation. So that's probably an off-topic conversation for a little bit later. But still just wanted to throw that thought out there. So can be tackled offline. Any other parting comments before we look to wrap up? I've got one last slide after this one, but is there anything before that closing? I know a number of you will be crushed if we don't make it all the way till 8 o'clock. Councilmember Worthen.
It is Animal Control Officer Appreciation Week. Just throwing that out there. Make sure you appreciate your animal control officers.
Awesome, thank you. Scott, can you go to the next slide? So council rules have us making sure that we notice the upcoming council meetings. Just want to make sure that this is available for any of the public so they know where to find us. We've also got some of the different committees that don't necessarily have a quorum or the full body of the council present. So this is next few, and you'll see we're meeting tomorrow. Having shared that, I would look to the body for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Green, second by Councilmember Worthen. And all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we stand adjourned at 7:51. Thank you everybody for taking the time to be out here. Very much appreciate it.
Nay.
Have a good evening.
Nay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Nay.
Chad, did I miss you? Okay. One in opposition. We'll make sure the minutes show that Councilmember Lamb was opposed to ending the meeting at a reasonable hour.
Hey,
Yeah, you
for
can
those
go
of
ahead
you on
and
the
stay
city
on.
council, let's do this tomorrow.
Alan, just keep this going.
Same
so
time, same
I can meet
place.
him all night.
All right. Have a good
Same
night,
bad
everyone.
time, same bad channel, huh?